dog, they feared that. You called this years ago. You said the system needed witnesses, and now the witnesses on show. Every prosecutor in America gotta hold the line. Every defense attorney watching, we the spotlight on design. Pro say the foundation, due process the religion. 100,000 classrooms learning how to win the decision. This ain't a channel, this a movement at this point. Every comment is a teacher, every video a joint that cracks the system open, lets the people see the truth. We the machine, they fear that. We keeping every proof. 100,000 teeth. Let's go. The machine is here. 100,000.
All right, you can have a seat. All right, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, the court just, and I say this just to reference to you by numbers. We start down at the far right and run down this way, 1 through 6, upper right, 7 through 12. So, Miss Juror number 7, you are the foreperson? And the jury's arrived at a unanimous verdict? All right, if you would, please, ma'am, stand and announce that verdict on behalf of the jury.
We, the jury, find the defendant Blaise Allen Taylor for count 1, guilty of second-degree murder. For count 2, guilty of first-degree premeditated murder. For count 3, guilty of first-degree felony murder during the commission of a felony. For count 4, guilty of first-degree felony murder during the commission of a felony.
All right, if you'll turn that document in, please, ma'am.
And ladies and gentlemen, that is the verdict that came down this past week in the Blaise Taylor trial. Guilty, second degree, 3 first-degree guilties. 3 first-degree guilties. So, what are we to make of this? First of all, it was I predicted the timing of it. By the time I got done listening to closings, I realized, I knew that we were going to have a quick verdict in this case. And I predicted it. I said 3 o'clock my time, that we were going to have a verdict in the guilt phase. And sure enough, 3 o'clock my time, we had a verdict. And by 7 o'clock, we had a sentence. And it was exactly the sentence I thought it would be, because I figured that if there was any type of dissension and there might have been in that room, they would just settle it by giving him a simple life sentence, which essentially is 51 years in prison. That's right, 51 years in prison. So it was a decision of life in prison or 51 years in prison, or life no parole or 51 years in prison. And that was what this jury was faced with. And Blaise Taylor's life changed forever. And it has always fascinated me, especially when someone's out on bond like Blaise Taylor was, what they go through when that realization hits. Because I'm sure, well, I know that by the time he got to trial, so much time had passed. He was very much separated from the initial offense. And he had inoculated himself with defense attorneys and family members, and I'm sure the defense attorney had run through the typical things that defense attorneys tell you when you're in Blaise Taylor's situation, and that is that they've got to prove their case. There's something called a presumption of innocence. They've got to prove it. And his attorney came in, and, you know, I'm sure it all sounded great when the family was handing over the hundreds of thousands of dollars they handed over to these attorneys for the defense. But then, of course, once it got up in front of the jury, it was pretty simple. This young lady had cocaine in her system. There was one other person in the apartment. There was no conceivable or reasonable explanation as to how that cocaine got in her body. She wasn't a cocaine user. And very succinctly and very easily, this jury went back and said guilty. And they found him guilty right under the exact scenario that I felt they would. And that was, he was trying to terminate the pregnancy. He did not fully understand how cocaine poisoning worked. He gave her too much, and I believe it was proven well beyond a reasonable doubt that he had, before he arrived, distilled the cocaine down into a liquid form using a little bit of alcohol, which, again, the defense proved. This really came more from the defense than the state because of the coke-ethylene. And it was such a low amount of coke-ethylene that it fell below the bar, but it was still there, demonstrating exactly how he did it. And the defense did all of this in an attempt to try to suggest that the alcohol and the cocaine somehow presented this idea that this mom, who was having an art night for her baby's nursery, was at the same time spiking her beverage with cocaine and alcohol. It made no sense. And the behavior of Blaise Taylor, the reaction of Blaise Taylor, everything he did read exactly like a man who had done something. He'd finally crossed the line. He did it. And next thing you know, he has an unconscious woman who's seizuring, who's throwing up, and he's panicking. He was absolutely panicking. I don't think he had any intention of killing this woman, but he had every intention of killing the baby that was living inside of her. And what ended up happening is he killed the woman. He knew, or had to have known, that what he was putting in her drink was very, very dangerous. Thereby, it met the standards of second degree. Now, there's a lot of evidentiary issues here. There's a lot of rulings that were made. So Blaise Taylor will definitely live, like many prisoners do, looking towards their next appeal date, their court date, and that's what will keep them going. Now, what I want to take you through, because what always fascinates me, as I said at the top of this thing, is we just watched him get convicted. We watched the last breaths of Blaise Taylor's freedom. As those cameras turned on in that courtroom, and he's sitting at the defense table, and he's got his watch on, he's still got his phone with him, and he's sitting there. And then I'm going to walk you through, because I've done a large amount of research on exactly what Blaise Taylor experienced that day, what he's experiencing now, and what his life is going to look like in the Tennessee prison system. Because it's not going to be easy. It's going to be terrible. And I think the irony of everything in a case like this is Blaise Taylor was trying to terminate a pregnancy to preserve his life, to preserve in his eyes, his standard of living that he felt was going to drop if a child was in it, either through child support or because he was going to be obligated as a father to have to be there for his child. So rather than obligate himself for choices he made, and again, this was not the first impregnated woman that he had out there whom he was able to convince to terminate a pregnancy. This was, by just the known in the case, this was the third one. But now he's going to live a very, very, very different life than he's been accustomed to his entire life. Because remember, his father was a well-renowned football coach. His mother, a doctor. He comes from a very upper middle class, affluent family. He's enjoyed the life of an athlete, as you heard his mother talk about his life, and he's, done a lot of charitable works and was always, adopting people to become part of the family, or he would be part of their family, but he was always a big athlete. he always walked around with much respect and living a life that was always above others. And now, well, we're going to walk through it. So I have a presentation here that I want us to go through and take a look at. I think you're going to find it very interesting. It's going to take you from this morning that you just saw to where Blaise Taylor will end up after sentencing is over, and where he'll be serving his sentences, and what this looks like. And it's quite harrowing. It's quite a stark reality. And to think of him right now sitting, it's now 3 days later after this verdict has come down, he's sitting in a jail cell right now contemplating this. Across the street from the courthouse he spent the last 3 weeks in, back in the jail where he started at, where at one point he was sitting there with bond, with a bond hearing and the ability to post bond and get out, and to have to go home to lawyers and parents that loved them, and in a huge infrastructure that was ready to fight for his innocence. And now he's just left with his actions. He's left with what he actually did, because he knows he knows what happened that night. And it's based on the evidence that was presented, it's overwhelming that what he did that night was he put a liquefied version of cocaine in her drink. His defense, I mean, we can get into it. I've done 3 shows on it. Where I was at when the state rested, I felt like there was a strong case of reasonable doubt that could be made. By the time his defense got done presenting, they'd filled in all the holes, and I had, by the end of their case, become convinced of his guilt, which is where I think his defense went wrong. Is they tried to prove a guilty man innocent, when what they should have been doing was arguing the gaps in the case and letting them stand for themselves, and going before the jury and saying, it was tough to watch the defense closing, because Letitia Hollins, or Quinones Hollins, stands up and says, we don't have to answer these questions. Well, that's tough for you to say that when you just spent 3 days trying to answer all those questions with several major backfires. And now you're going to stand up and say, well, we're not trying to answer them. Well, you should have put on a defense that looked like that. You should have done a minimal defense. And if you're not going to put Blaise on the witness stand to testify, you should have made it exactly what it was about. And that was, we don't have to tell you how this happened. What we can tell you is the state is obligated to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that this happened, and these are the gaps, these are the problems, these are the issues with the investigation. And instead, they went well beyond that and said, well, we're going to prove to you he's innocent, and they put on all these experts and essentially ended up proving, in my eyes, exactly how it happened. The cocaethylene and all these things that they were trying to say was pointing towards recreational use. They eliminated her recreational use. They put on her cell phone messages, and they slammed the door shut on his future. And they did all of this because I guess they were wanting to win. I guess they got emotionally involved. I don't know. I don't know what was driving the defense, but it seemed that they really were deluded in thinking that they had an innocent guy sitting there, yet there was no explanation. They really believed, I guess, somehow that, well, we're going to show you that she used drugs before. And then we're going to tell you that because she used marijuana and Adderall, she must have been using cocaine. And she must have been having herself a mixed drink, even though by Blaise's own statement to the police that night, he says there was no mixed drink, no alcohol. I mean, he's kissing this girl after all. Wouldn't he have smelled the alcohol? There was no evidence whatsoever that this girl was mixing alcohol or mixing drinks. So the whole cocaethylene and alcohol really ended up flying in the face of it, because it just made their client look like a liar. And since those statements were going before the jury, it was a disaster. And the more I thought about this case and the way it was presented, it was one of these things where I don't know if they were trying to justify their fees by saying, hey, we're going to come up with this creative defense, we're going to put all these expert witnesses on. But it was what I would call an overplayed hand, and they did too much. And even then, I don't know that if they would have gone with the strategy of less is more, like I'm saying, I don't know that would have led to a different verdict. It may not have, because at the end of the day, they were stuck very much with that there's one explanation for what's going on here. And that explanation is he's in the apartment. He's outside the apartment. He's running around outside instead of being inside. This girl's on her face throwing up. He's delaying. He's trying to call 911. He's running all around. He's panicking. He's being accused of poisoning her. He's not even saying he didn't poison her, which I thought was wild, where he's on the body cam being asked about this, and he says, I think she's just in shock. Anybody, if it was me and I was being accused of poisoning my lady, that in his case, it was his lady that he was having a baby with. It was not really his significant other. It was significant other in the making. But if I was being accused of that, I'm screaming at the top of my lungs to the highest mountain. I didn't do that. What are you talking about? That ain't me. I didn't do that. I'm not saying, well, she's in shock. I'm not making any excuse for her. That's him being, that's guilty behavior. That's, like I said, by the end of the case, it was very, very clear that this was going to be a fast verdict. And this kid, this privileged kid, was going to get his comeuppance. Now, let's get to the promised presentation. I'm sure you guys have agreement on that with what I'm saying. But let's get to the promised presentation now, without further ado. So let me shrink myself down here a little bit, and we're going to watch Blaise Taylor's journey to prison. So join me here as we watch what I think is a very, very interesting, in my opinion, I put this presentation together, and as I was putting it together, this information, I was like, wow. So we're going to kind of play it. I'll stop it where if I feel like I want to give some input, I'm not sure if I'm going to. I may just give you all my input after. But watch this, because what's coming for him, it's not going to be fun. But let's get started.
Imagine, if you will, waking up in your own bed. You put on a meticulously tailored suit, right?
Yeah.
And you walk through the grand glass doors of a downtown courthouse. And you're a free professional.
You're just walking in with the public.
Exactly. You chat with your defense attorney. You pass through the exact same metal detectors as folks who are just there to, pay a traffic ticket.
Right. Just a totally normal morning.
Yeah, and you take the elevator up. But then just a few hours later, you are walking out of that very same building in handcuffs.
Completely stripped of all that.
Literally ushered across this hidden, windowless sky bridge. I mean, you are completely vanished from public life for the next half century.
It sounds like, the opening of a movie.
It really does.
Yeah.
But it's exactly what unfolded on the morning of July 1st, 2020.
And, that transition you just described, it represents the absolute zenith of a life-altering pivot.
Yeah.
Society constructs these physical and legal thresholds where one moment you possess full autonomy.
Yeah.
You move freely through the world on bond.
Right.
And then the next millisecond, your physical body essentially becomes the heavily managed property of the state.
And tracing that exact shift, that is our mission for this deep dive today.
Absolutely.
We're looking at this incredible source document. It's titled The Path of Conviction, Blaise Taylor's Journey to Prison.
It's a tough read, but incredibly detailed.
Yeah, and the goal today for you listening is to completely deconstruct the invisible step-by-step machinery of the justice system.
We're going to track exactly what happens to a human being.
From the precise moment a guilty verdict echoes in a courtroom, through this sprawling physical and bureaucratic maze, down to the stark daily reality of a life sentence.
Because it's a profound transition that, honestly, the general public is entirely blind to.
Oh, 100%.
The popular perception of justice almost always ends with the bang of the judge's gavel, right?
Right, the cameras pack up.
Exactly. The articles get published, and society just sort of collectively assumes the story is over.
But it's not.
Not at all. We are going to explore how that Gattle strike is really just the starting gun for a highly engineered, deeply psychological transition.
You go from an individual citizen into essentially a standardized unit within a vast administrative matrix.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is.
So let's ground this in the facts of that morning, July 1st. You've got Blaise Taylor.
He's 30 years old, a former collegiate athlete, and an NFL scout.
Right. And he walks into the Justice A.A. Birch building in Nashville.
You know, keep in mind, he had been out on a $2.5 million bond.
So I want to take a second and just stop right here because, yes, Blaise Allen, I want you to think about this. Blaise Allen Taylor, if you didn't know when you were watching this case, he was out on a $2.5 million bond. I want you to think about that. He had to be posted, I think, through 10 different bonding agencies. He spent about a month in jail after his arrest before he was able to get bonded out, and he had a full bond hearing. And then Judge Dozier set a bond of $2.5 million. Most people would never be able to make that bond, but he made it. So he sat out 2.5 years. So as he's sitting in that courtroom, yeah, he's on ankle monitor. But I want you to think, what about something you were doing 2.5, 3 years ago? How emotionally connected are you to that moment? And he's sitting here. He's got expensive attorneys. He's got expert witnesses. He's been promised, hey, Blaise, you're getting out of this, right? And of course, being an athlete, being someone who's gone through the college system of athletics and all the way up to the NFL, he knows that most of the time these things, lots of stuff gets worked out, you know? And in this case, if you look at the way it was going, the way they work things out a lot of times is they do the things that happened with this case, with the evidence, where it wasn't investigated right away, the crime scene was turned over to the family and contaminated. You're getting a lot of the excuses for why they would have never pursued this case, especially at the time. He's part of the Titans organization, and you know, you haven't seen the back end of what's going on and who's crawling around in the back rooms talking to the police. It's not even going to be talked about. But the NFL has a huge, and again, I'm not going to talk too deeply about it, but they have a huge infrastructure of individuals who, when a player gets in trouble or a member of their organization gets in trouble, they have a way of just getting right to the sources and starting to shut it down. And a lot of what happened in this case appears to me like they were heading down that road, and then she died. And then it was like, we're not going to make this go away. And clearly, you can tell that was the position because Blaise Taylor is let go. Well, we're just going to say he separates from the Titans organization shortly after this occurs and moves to Utah. So that kind of tells you where the Titans were willing to go and what was happening here. And they were like, you're not important enough. So the police then were left with a situation where it was like, well, they're going to have to go forward with this. This isn't getting pushed under the rug. And there was, of course, problems. Anyways, we'll get back to the story. But, you know, I can't even imagine mentally where this guy's at that morning when we saw that guilty verdict come in, because there's no way he could have prepared himself for where he's at today.
For over 2 years at this point.
Which is massive. And he was wearing a GPS ankle monitor, sure, but he arrived in a suit. He walked in under his own power.
Right.
The jury received the case just before noon, and we're going to begin our analysis right at the emotional climax, which is the reading of the verdict.
Because that's the catalyst.
Yeah.
That activates this entire hidden machine.
Yeah.
And the timeline of that deliberation is, well, it's incredibly telling.
Because it was fast.
Very fast. The jury returned in only 2 to 3 hours.
Wow.
Historically, that kind of speed suggests a jury that found the prosecution's narrative overwhelmingly compelling right out of the gate.
Yeah, they didn't agonize over it for days.
No. Yet, what they delivered was a split verdict, which reflects the complex, layered nature of the charges they were untangling.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because the courtroom drama leading up to this was intense.
Extremes.
You had two completely incompatible realities being presented to the jury. Assistant DA Jan Norman laid out this really chilling timeline.
Arguing that Taylor deliberately laced his pregnant girlfriend's drink.
Right, Jade Benning. Laced it with cocaine because the state argued he fundamentally did not want the child she was carrying.
It's a horrific accusation.
And then on the other side, defense attorney Letitia Quinones-Hollins presented an entirely different reality.
She argued this was a tragic but accidental overdose.
Yeah, she heavily emphasized that Taylor was not, a person involved in the drug trade.
Right.
When a jury has to reconcile those two extremes and they come back in under 3 hours, it creates an atmosphere of just pure tension in the room.
You can imagine you could hear a pin drop.
Exactly. And they ultimately found him guilty of second-degree murder for Jade Benning, but they escalated the charge to first-degree premeditated murder for her unborn daughter, Ivy.
Alongside 2 counts of felony murder.
Yeah. And the collision of those legal findings immediately triggered an emotional shockwave.
The victim impact statements, detailed in the source material, they highlight just the sheer devastation radiating from this event.
It's heartbreaking to read.
Jade's aunt, Brandy Moran, spoke about how this sudden, violent loss completely destroyed Jade's mother.
Yeah, Bridget Burks. And Bridget delivered this harrowing description of compartmentalized grief.
Explaining how she puts on a mask for the world to say she's fine.
But behind closed doors, she's suffering this profound, invisible agony.
And then, you look across the aisle, and the tragedy compounding the room just continues.
Right, because you have Dr. Evelyn Taylor, Blaise's mother, taking the stand.
To speak to her son's character.
She wasn't arguing the forensic evidence. She was pleading for the boy she raised.
She described a good student, a respectful son, a man who had never been in trouble with the law prior to this.
That contrast is devastating. But looking at the source document, what absolutely fascinated me was the legal maneuvering regarding the punishment itself.
Right, this is where it gets highly technical.
Because the state pushed aggressively for life without the possibility of parole. But the jury opted to recommend life imprisonment.
Which perfectly illustrates.
And I have to stop for a moment because I have to give my little plug on where I was at with this, because I firmly believe life with the possibility of parole should be the maximum sentence ever. Okay? Because I don't think it makes sense. And again, I'm just going to drop this in here because it's coming up here. But I don't think it makes sense to take away any and all hope. And again, in college, I took a corrections class, and it was a huge debate I had with my professor at the time of what the purpose of corrections is. Is it just correction? How do you call it corrections, right? If you're not creating a path to let someone correct their behavior. And I've always said someone should have the opportunity, right? A life sentence is a life sentence. I believe there should be life sentences. What that simply should mean is that you never get to live free again of supervision, because you've done the worst thing that you could possibly do. That's take a life. So it should be lifetime parole, lifetime supervision. But there should be an ability to live and memorialize that person and be able to eventually have the opportunity to reform yourself and then go out and do something good in spirit. I've always said to myself, if a family member of mine was taken in a violent way, the idea that the culmination of that event is going to only be that somebody sits in a cement box and does nothing and gets nothing more than that and just suffers, to me, just seems like a waste. What I would love to see is let that person who made this mistake, if they can become better, if they can figure out how they got to that point to making the decision they did, and they can one day go out and affect the world in a positive way, then you're living in memoriam of the person, of the life you took. Now, if you never achieve that, if you can never be safe, if you can never show that you're worthy of that opportunity, then you should never have the opportunity to be out and free again. And a life sentence allows for that. It allows that if that person is not fit to come back out, but to take that away is counterintuitive. And it makes it also forgets that, and this is something that I've tried to remind people, and I remember my father would remind people of this, is we own the individual on the other side. Meaning, not every sentence is a life sentence. A lot of time, but when you give someone, say, a 20-year sentence, and the best they get out of that is just hard time, we own that person. We own the next victim. We own the next person they hurt because of what they became inside that system. And there is a wealth of studies that show that when we invest in these individuals that are broken, what got them there a lot of times is a lot of bad stuff. But what we get back out, give them the opportunity to give us something better back out. Pay back society, right? And the recidivism rates are lower, and therefore we have a safer society by, again, I've always said, what you put in is what you get back out. If what we put in is suffering, we will get suffering back out. Anyways, I'll come off my soapbox on that, but I want to take a moment and just drop that in. Let me know your thoughts on it. But that is my perspective and take on it. But let's get back to where we're at in this story.
Illustrates how the terminology of the American legal system can be incredibly opaque to anyone outside of it.
Oh, completely.
Because if you poll the average person on the street, they assume life imprisonment means, incarceration until natural death.
Right. And they assume life with parole means they might get out in 15 or 20 years with good behavior.
Exactly. But in the state of Tennessee, neither of those common sense assumptions actually applies.
No, they don't. I was digging into the legal precedents mentioned in our sources, specifically this 2018 Tennessee Supreme Court ruling.
Ah, yes. Brown v. Jordan.
Yes, Brown v. Jordan. The mathematical reality established by that ruling is staggering.
It really is.
Tennessee legally defines a life sentence as a fixed 60-year term, and the ruling dictates that an inmate can only reduce that sentence by a maximum of 15%.
Through earned sentence credits.
Right. So do the math. 15% of 60 is 9. So 60 minus 9 leaves a mandatory absolute hard floor of 51 calendar years.
51 years that must be served before the parole board will even accept a meeting.
It's wild.
And applying that inflexible math to the individual is where the true weight of the sentence becomes apparent.
Because Blaise Taylor was 30 years old on the day that verdict was read.
Right. So adding 51 mandatory years means he will not even be eligible to ask for parole until the year 2077.
2070.
He will be approximately 81 years old.
Jeez.
And parole at that stage is a request, not a guarantee. The board can easily deny it.
Looking at those numbers, I mean, getting a life with parole sentence at 30 years old, it feels like a mirage.
It does.
It's as if the system placed the safety net just past the edge of average human life expectancy.
Yeah.
But I have to push back on something here.
Okay, go ahead.
The defense team fought incredibly hard to secure that specific life with parole recommendation rather than life without parole.
Right. They really did.
They must believe that sliver of hope matters. From a practical standpoint, is a 1% chance of freedom at age 81 actually better than 0?
Well, from a purely biological and actuarial standpoint,
Yeah.
it functions as a terminal sentence.
Yeah.
The life expectancy of a long-term incarcerated male is significantly lower than the national average, mainly due to the stress and conditions of confinement.
Sure.
However, from a psychological standpoint, the defense attorney's fight is crucial. The human brain struggles to process absolute finality.
Oh, I see.
Having a date on a calendar, even if it is half a century away, provides a psychological anchor.
Like a light at the end of a very, very long tunnel.
Exactly. It gives the individual a theoretical reason to participate in institutional programming and maintain good behavior.
But the reality is, the moment that verdict is finalized, life as a free citizen is extinguished.
Immediately.
Here's where it gets really interesting to me. We have all been conditioned by Hollywood to expect a certain visual sequence after a major conviction.
Right, the perp walk?
Yeah. The defendant is led out the heavy front doors of the courthouse, flashbulbs are popping, reporters are shouting questions.
Shoved into the back of a police van idling on a busy street.
Exactly. But the source material reveals that is entirely a myth. The system is explicitly designed so the public never sees that person again.
Never.
The courthouse functions almost like a theater with a massive invisible backstage. It's designed to vanish a person the second the gavel falls.
The architecture itself enforces the sentence before the paperwork is even filed.
How so?
Well, the Justice A.A. Birch Building is a $40 million facility designed by the architectural firm Gresham Smith.
Okay.
And they engineered the structure with two parallel, completely distinct circulation systems.
So 2 separate worlds in one building.
Exactly. There's the public flow, the airy lobbies, the grand staircases, glass panels letting in natural light.
Yeah.
And then there's the prisoner flow, a secondary network of secure elevators and concrete corridors. The two environments never intersect.
So the millisecond the jury foreman reads the word guilty, Taylor's $2.5 million bond is revoked.
Instantly.
He is immediately pulled into that hidden backstage. The court officers move in. His hands are secured behind his back in steel cuffs.
Right.
He's taken through a secure door, stripped of his tie, his belt, his shoelaces, his phone. I mean, every physical marker of a free professional adult is confiscated in an instant.
No, I want to weigh in on one thing that probably some of you might be thinking, especially if you watched court closely on that day. And I heard this in the comments section. Many of you were saying, hey, wait a minute, he wasn't in Florida. They come right on you and they handcuff you and everything. In Tennessee, they did, because he was entitled to additional proceedings in regards to his sentence to determine if he was getting life without parole or if he was getting the life sentence, which is a 60-year sentence that he can be parole eligible at 51 years. So as a result, the judge, again, showing his fairness, because the judge comes across like he's kind of a jerk, but he's really not. He's a more of a matter-of-fact guy, very set in his ways, very set in this is how I'm going to do it and this is the ruling I want to make, and he knows how to. He's been at this long enough that he absolutely knows how to do it. I believe I read that Steve Dozier became a judge. I believe it was I want to say it was 1997. So he's been there for a long, long time. But the point is, we didn't see what they're referring to here is what happened to him once the sentencing phase was over. And they said, Mr. Taylor, step to the back with your team. And well, at first they let him step to the back. That was a little conferencing area or conference room that they had that prisoners in custody meet with their attorneys at and all that stuff. It's secured. But then right beyond that is where he headed back once it was all done. And that's where he's going to be ties taken off, belts taken off. He's handcuffed. And well, I'll let it take you through the rest of it. It's quite interesting what he went through as soon as court was over that night around 7:00 Nashville time.
Instant.
And then he takes the walk across the sky bridge.
Yes, the sky bridge.
Which is arguably the most potent physical metaphor of the entire justice system.
Describe it for us.
It is a secure, enclosed, heavily fortified bridge suspended over 2nd Avenue North.
Wow.
It physically tethers the 6th-floor courtrooms of the Birch Building directly to the booking area of the downtown jail complex.
The sensory contrast of that walk, I mean, it's just chilling to visualize. You are moving through this sterile, elevated tube.
Right.
Directly below you, citizens are driving their cars to work. They're grabbing coffee on the sidewalk, living completely normal.
And again, I want you to appreciate that. If you look right there, you can see the sky bridge right in between the buildings. And I want you to look at that for a minute and just appreciate that sky bridge. Oops. Hold on. That sky bridge right here. This is it. Look what they're saying here. This is the courthouse, I believe. And then they walk across here to the prison, right over here. Or actually, I think the prison might be right here. I'm not sure which one is which, actually, to be honest with you. But this looks like this would be the prison, I think, or the courthouse, I mean. But anyways, the sky bridge, the point of it is he's walking across and literally he's looking out at where he walked in from. He's looking back out as he's walking across there, realizing, I drove in here today. I arrived as a free man. I'll never be free again. And that's a realization that he's having in real time as he's walking across that sky bridge. That's harrowing to think. And as he's walking through there thinking, digesting that, like everything's just changed. There's no attorney, there's no football person, there's no football coach, there's no mom, there's no dad, there's nobody that can get me out of what's about to happen to me. And all done, all of his own making.
Across the sky bridge.
Yes, the sky bridge.
Which is arguably the most potent physical metaphor of the entire justice system.
Describe it for us.
It is a secure, enclosed, heavily fortified bridge suspended over 2nd Avenue North.
Wow.
It physically tethers the 6th-floor courtrooms of the Birch Building directly to the booking area of the downtown jail complex.
The sensory contrast of that walk, I mean, it's just chilling to visualize. You are moving through this sterile, elevated tube.
Right.
Directly below you, citizens are driving their cars to work. They're grabbing coffee on the sidewalk, living completely normal, chaotic downtown Nashville lives.
Just ordinary Tuesday stuff.
Exactly. And you are walking 20 feet above their heads on a one-way trip, acutely aware that you will likely not step foot on an unfenced sidewalk again for 51 years.
The transition from the grand legal theater to the gritty reality of local county custody, it is instantaneous.
So you cross that threshold and you are deposited into the local machinery, the Downtown Detention Center, or DDC,
Right.
which is operated by the Davidson County Sheriff's Office, currently under Sheriff Darren Hall.
It's a vital distinction that this initial holding phase is a government-run local facility, not a state prison or a private contractor.
And the booking process at the DDC is where the systematic dismantling of the individual truly begins.
Yeah.
Reading through the procedures, it's not just, snapping a mugshot. It is stripping away the tailored suit and replacing it with a county-issued orange, tan, or striped uniform.
You're fingerprinted, your catalog.
And then forced to undergo immediate medical and psychological evaluations.
This raises an important question. How does a human mind process the sudden, undeniable realization that the trajectory of their entire life has just been severed?
I can't even imagine.
The psychological shock of a 51-year minimum sentence is violently profound.
Yeah.
That is precisely why the suicide risk assessment during this intake phase is absolutely critical.
Okay, that makes sense.
The county jail staff is tasked with evaluating whether this newly convicted individual who has just hit absolute rock bottom and lost everything is an immediate danger to themselves.
It feels exactly like being trapped in the grim waiting room of the justice system.
That's a good way to put it.
You know your ultimate fate. You know you are facing decades behind bars. But the actual state prison punishment hasn't officially begun.
Right.
You're stuck in local limbo. The leveling of your daily existence is absolute. Yesterday, you could pick up your smartphone and dial anyone on the planet.
Today, you are limited to scheduled remote video visitations.
You eat when a tray is slid through a slot. You sleep when Central Command turns off the lights. But why does the system hold someone in this local purgatory instead of immediately sending them to prison?
The delay is purely bureaucratic and legal.
Okay.
Following a major trial, the local court must process a mountain of paperwork. The defense is filing post-trial motions.
Right.
The court clerk is finalizing the felony judgment. And most importantly, the individual is waiting for their formal sentencing hearing.
Which, in this specific case, was scheduled for September 9, 2026.
Yes, that hearing is critical because the judge will officially determine if the sentences for the multiple charges will run concurrently, meaning at the same time, or consecutively, meaning stacked one after the other.
Oh, I see.
Until that September gavel falls and the final paperwork clears to the Tennessee Department of Correction, the individual remains the responsibility of the county.
Wow. Okay, so once that September hearing concludes, the county waiting room finally empties you into the state pipeline.
Right.
This initiates the physical transport out of Nashville. And the logistics of this transport are severe.
Oh, yeah.
We're talking waist chains, leg shackles, being loaded into a heavily secured, partitioned vehicle.
And driving away from the city toward the Cumberland Plateau.
The destination is the Bledsoe County Correctional Complex, or BCCX, located in Pikeville.
And Bledsoe is a staggering piece of infrastructure.
Massive, right.
It occupies roughly 2,500 acres of land, and while it houses inmates long-term, its primary function for the state of Tennessee is operating as the Site 1 Diagnostic Center. Yes, every single male offender entering state custody passes through Bledsoe. We are looking at a facility that conducts over 4,500 intakes every single year.
Looking at how Bledsoe operates, it doesn't function like a traditional prison. It functions like a reverse assembly line.
How do you mean?
Well, instead of building a product, the facility systematically dismantles a person's individuality
Right.
until all that is left is a standardized unit that fits perfectly into the state's administrative machinery.
Right.
You arrive, and your name is effectively retired, replaced by a permanent TDOC identification number.
Yes, you become a number.
And over several weeks, they run a battery of tests to determine your medical requirements, your psychiatric baseline, and your educational programming needs. It's like the most high-stakes, grim HR onboarding process imaginable.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the sociological how of institutionalization requires this exact methodology.
It has to, right? Yeah. Exactly. The Department of Correction is responsible for managing tens of thousands of individuals, and each arrives with unique trauma, behavioral patterns, and criminal histories.
Yeah.
A system of that magnitude simply cannot function if it treats people as individuals.
That makes sense.
The diagnostic process at Bledsoe translates human complexity into manageable data points.
Right.
And the single most critical data point generated during this process is the security classification.
Whether they are minimum, medium, close, or maximum custody.
Exactly.
Because that single classification dictates the exact parameters of the next 5 decades of your life.
It does.
Bledsoe is just the funnel. Once your file gets stamped with that security level, you are shipped to your permanent destination.
Right.
And analyzing the source documents, the options for someone with a high-profile life sentence are incredibly stark.
They really are.
If you are classified as maximum security, or if the notoriety of your case demands strict isolation, you are likely looking at option A, which is the Riverbend Maximum Security Institution in Nashville. And Riverbend is the apex of state control. It is where Tennessee houses its male death row inmates and its most high-profile violent offenders.
Right.
The defining feature of life at Riverbend is the isolation. You are housed in an individual cell that measures approximately 60 square feet.
60 square feet.
Yes. It contains a steel bed, a combination toilet, and a small sink. That 60 square foot footprint is the absolute physical boundary of your daily existence.
To put 60 square feet into perspective for you listening, that is the size of a standard walk-in closet in a modern suburban home.
Exactly.
Imagine living every day for 51 years inside a walk-in closet. The claustrophobia of that is just suffocating.
It's hard to fathom.
But looking at the Department of Justice files in our sources, it seems like avoiding Riverbend isn't necessarily a win.
No, not at all.
If an inmate is classified as medium security and sent to option B, a place like the Trousdale Turner Correctional Center in Hartsville, they are trading a tiny, secure box for absolute chaos.
The dynamic at Trousdale is fundamentally different, and it's primarily because of economics.
Right, because it's private.
Yes. Trousdale is the state's largest prison, but it is not run by the government. It is privately operated by a corporation called CoreCivic.
And the tension there lies in the inherent conflict between the profit motive of a private contractor and the immense cost of maintaining adequate security staffing. The numbers in the August 2024 DOJ civil rights investigation are deeply alarming.
They're shocking, really.
The U.S. Attorney cited a 188% turnover rate among prison guards at Trousdale in a single year.
188%.
And the state audits found instances where a single officer was tasked with supervising over 300 inmates simultaneously.
Which is...
How does a facility even function with that kind of ratio?
It barely functions, and the volatility is explosive.
I bet.
When a private corporation attempts to maximize margins, officer pay often remains low, while the stress to the environment is unimaginably high.
Leading to that massive turnover.
Exactly. And when you have one exhausted, underpaid guard watching 300 inmates, institutional control dissolves.
Right.
The environment becomes incredibly dangerous.
Yeah.
Contraband flows freely, violence escalates, and the basic safety of the inmates who are, remember, entirely dependent on the state for protection, is severely compromised.
So the stark reality of a life sentence is essentially choosing between two extremes.
Yes.
A highly controlled, deeply isolating 60-square-foot box at Riverbend, or navigating the deadly, understaffed chaos of a private facility where you are vastly outnumbered.
What's fascinating here, speaking purely from the perspective of how institutions manage human time, is that a life sentence isn't just a massive empty void where you sit and stare at a wall.
Right.
It is a highly managed, micro-scheduled routine designed to maintain order.
Break that routine down because it shatters another common myth about prison life. You aren't just left alone to serve your time in peace.
Not at all. Your daily existence is subjected to rigid counts multiple times a day to ensure you are physically present. Your movement across the compound is tightly restricted and monitored. Communication is severely throttled.
Phone calls are typically outbound only, right?
Yes, meaning you cannot receive a call from your family when they need you, and every single word you say is recorded and logged.
Jeez.
Furthermore, you are required to work.
Doing what?
Support service jobs, cleaning the facility, maintaining the grounds, working in the kitchens. Or you are mandated to enroll in educational or vocational training.
So there's no downtime.
Every single hour of those 51 years is structured by the authority of the institution.
So what does this all mean? When we pull back from the specific details of Blaise Taylor's conviction and look at this entire hidden machinery, we started out talking about how the public consumes justice.
Right.
The public watches a sensational trial on the news. They hear the jury say guilty. They hear the judge say life sentence.
And they think, okay, the system worked, the story is over.
Yeah, they change the channel. But for the human being standing at the defense table, that courtroom is just the doorway.
It's the beginning.
It is the entrance into a grinding bureaucratic reality that will dictate when they eat, when they sleep, and who they can speak to for the rest of their natural life.
It demands that we redefine what it means to be well-informed about the criminal justice system.
Absolutely.
The verdict itself is merely an abstract legal concept.
Yeah.
The actual execution of justice is fiercely physical. It is the weight of the steel handcuffs.
Right.
It is the sensory deprivation of the hidden sky bridge. It is the intrusive psychiatric evaluations, the heavy waist chains on the transport bus pulling up the Cumberland Plateau, and the exact suffocating dimensions of a cinder block cell.
It is a profoundly sobering journey we have just traced.
Truly.
We started on the 6th floor of the Birch Building with a free man in a tailored suit listening to complex legal theories. And we followed the mechanics of his erasure.
Step by step.
The instantaneous revocation of a multi-million-dollar bond. The physical stripping of his identity. That surreal walk above the citizens of Nashville.
The psychological shock of local booking.
The reverse assembly line of the Bledsoe Diagnostic Center. And finally, the permanent assignment to a highly volatile microscheduled existence until the year 2077.
Yeah.
Understanding this physical and bureaucratic maze entirely changes how you interpret the phrase sentence to life.
It strips away the abstraction of the law and grounds it in concrete, day-to-day human experience.
Right.
The machinery is vast, it is meticulously methodical, and it operates entirely out of sight by deliberate design.
I want to leave you, our listener, with a final provocative thought to mull over today.
Okay.
Think back to that September 9th sentencing hearing we discussed, where the judge finalizes the paperwork. Consider the bizarre, almost science fiction reality of that moment for the person standing before the bench.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Their personal timeline is effectively freezing in the year 2026. The music, the culture, the technology, it all stops for them right there in that room.
Wow.
Meanwhile, those cars that they walked 20 feet above on the 2nd Avenue Sky Bridge, those cars are going to keep driving. The city below is going to keep changing, constructing new buildings, and evolving for the next 51 years.
Moving forward relentlessly.
Completely without them.
Tying inside the walls grinds to an excruciating halt, while the world outside simply accelerates away.
It is a staggering concept to wrap your mind around. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive today.
It's been fascinating.
We always appreciate you bringing your curiosity and exploring the reality behind these hidden systems with us. We will be back next time to deconstruct another complex world. But until then, keep asking questions and keep looking beneath the surface.
So, there you have it, guys. Again, I told you, a very interesting future is in store for Mr. Taylor. A future that I'm sure he can't even imagine, couldn't imagine for himself. But what I find harrowing, again, is really the idea that, as we saw him, he's sitting in that courtroom. Everything freezes. And for him, especially, like I said, he's going to be clinging to appeal dates and lawyers that are going to take his money and tell him you've got these great issues. And he does have legitimate issues. But at the end of the day, while these issues exist, even, short of an appellate court coming in saying that the blood should be excluded due to the chain of custody issues, which is a possibility. It's not likely, but it's a possibility. Or it's a possibility that they might find that, the judge erred in some of his rulings, evidentiary wise, or with his evidence decisions. There's a whole slew of issues that came up here, especially around the way with the expert testifying, where they didn't put the expert on the witness stand. That's a real legitimate issue that is going to come up because the Supreme Court in 2024 said you can't have surrogates. The judge said there's an exception. Or in his eyes, he looked at it and said, in this case, we're going to make the exception here because this is a standard practice. And he went ahead and decided that he was going to admit the evidence and he was going to allow this expert to come in and testify. And that's kind of how this judge operates, because he says, you know what? Reverse me. Do you have the courage to reverse the evidence on this? And it's possible that a reversal could happen and they could send it in and they could say, well, this expert's going to need to come in and testify and come to the jury, and then Blaise Taylor, in that instance, might have a shot of getting out again on bond while he awaits another trial. And we would have round two. It will be several years down the road before anything like that will happen. But he's got some decent appellate issues. And that would be the only way, that would be the only way that he would ever see freedom. But otherwise, he's never going to see freedom again. And the idea that we saw those final moments, that he's walking into that courtroom, going to that defense table, sitting down between his attorneys, and, you have to wonder, is he thinking to himself, oh man, this is a slam dunk. This is I'm going to win this case. I mean, he had to have known that things didn't go well for him in the trial. I mean, he had to, right? You would think. What was his attorney saying to him? But the reality is, it's very likely Blaise Taylor will never, ever set foot again as a free man until he's 81 years old. And that's if he makes it and lives that long in an institutional setting, because it is very difficult physically to survive that long inside an institution. It's not impossible. And he's an athlete. And he's, I'm sure, taking care of his body very well up until now. But we'll see what happens. And he's going to have means. He's going to have money. He's going to have the ability to try to fight this thing and fight to stay alive. But we'll see what happens. But I wanted to put this together for you because I feel like we always leave these cases at the courtroom level, and we watch that defendant taken out. Sometimes the defendant's already sitting at the county jail the whole trial. Few cases, you have a few cases here, like the Ferris case where she was taken right out of the courtroom. She was out on bond. You don't see many cases where someone's out on bond and they lose, because most of the time bond is granted on the weaker cases. But every now and again, you see a case like this where this individual gets out on bond. Or in Texas, we watched a case a while back. I remember a gentleman, he was out on bond for like 3 years. He was charged with killing his wife, or I guess soon to be ex-wife, and he ended up, going right out. I think he got 60 some years in prison or something like that. Texas, Tennessee, these southern states, they take bond very serious, because they do recognize the fact that you're innocent until proven guilty. So you get the right to bond. Now, it's oftentimes a high bond. There's oftentimes a lot of restrictions involved, but they'll let you out, and they'll let you walk around, and they'll let you keep working, and they'll let you keep going about your life and your business. But once that conviction happens, like this judge said, by matter of law, your bond is revoked, sir. You're no longer free. And this is what he experienced and is experiencing right now, because he's only 3 days in. And he's got a lot of time before he spent more time in an institution than he has as a free man. He'd have to be 60 years old before that happens. So he's going to be transitioning, and he's going to be dealing with having to let go of freedom. And that's where we sit. But rightly so, right? You do this, you make a decision like this, you take a risk like that, you try to self-terminate a pregnancy. This is what happens. You put cocaine in someone's drink. This is what happens. And this is where you end up. So make good decisions, and if you're in a situation where you're having a child with someone that you're not married to and whatever, it's not worth it. It's not worth it to take action like this. Take your responsibility. Because I guarantee you, if he could go back now, looking at where he's at after he spends a few nights in here and realizing he's never going home again, he would probably absolutely 100% be loving to be a father right now. And you know what? He might have found out that it wasn't as bad as he thought. It wouldn't have been as bad as he thought. He would have had a child and someone that he would have had in his life, and a legacy to lead on. Now his legacy will be this: the man that stuck cocaine in a drink to avoid responsibility and ended up killing 2 people. Sad story. Anyways, guys, this is how we're going to end our Blaise Taylor coverage, because we got another trial coming up this week we're going to start our coverage on. We got a couple of different cases. We're going to be covering the Tyler Robinson case coming up, preliminary hearing, and then we're going to be covering the Isaac I can't remember how to say his name, but the sword case, where it's kind of like a Charles Manson light, where this man allegedly, he didn't do it, but he's alleged to have had such control over his girlfriend's mind that he got her to kill on his behalf. So it's going to be a really interesting case. That's going to be the one I'm going to be focusing on. I'm going to be looking forward to digging deep into that one and seeing where that one goes. Because the jury down in New Mexico is going to have to decide if text messages and coercion is enough when somebody else, to say that somebody else should be guilty of the highest crime one could be guilty of, which is red rum, and we'll see what they say. So with that said, guys, let me know what you think in the comments. Perhaps it might not be the last time, because we're going to have sentencing for Blaise Taylor, so I have a feeling you'll hear more from me on it. But this will be the wrap, because we're going to be moving into that. So be on the lookout. We're going to do potentially a live that will either a live, or I'll do an introductory video or pre-recorded live on the new case that we've got coming up here this week. It starts the Isaac Acapulco. I'm not even trying to say his last name. that case starts on Wednesday. We've already got the live up for you, so make sure you get your hit your notification so that you're aware when we're live on that on Wednesday, and you can jump in there and come in and say hi, and we'll go from there. So with that said, guys, remember, justice always works better when we watch. So keep watching.
They said he built a machine. They were right. 100,000 deep. 100,000 deep. And we just getting started. Let's go. Watch. Woo. Started with a vision in a coffee shop dream. 2 years later, got 100,000 on the stream. Adults in the launch, Tucker Pro, seat broke through. Folio got us cooking every case. The channel grew. Koenig in Hawaii, digs up in Mass. Dykeman in Wisconsin, every courtroom on the glass. Miracle, Stonewall, church the docket never light. 7 videos a day, 30 minutes from the night. Drop them on the channel, watch them climb the algorithm. Watch the prosecutor flinch when they hear the justice rhythm. Adults in the catalyst, but we ain't never stopping. 100,000 soldiers, and the count keep on dropping. 100,000 deep. Let's go. The machine is here. 100,000 deep. Every prosecutor fear. 100,000 strong. We can't disappear. 100,000 eyes watching every gear. Watch the machine. Watch it. Watch the machine. Watch it. Daddy drew the blueprints on delivering the scene. 100,000 deep. And we just get it. 200 on the horizon, 500 on the map. Million in our future, every video we tap. We the watchdog, they feared that. You called this years ago. You said the system needed witnesses, and now the witnesses on show. Every prosecutor in America gotta hold the line. Every defense attorney watching, we the spotlight on design. Pro say the foundation, you process the religion. 100,000 classrooms learning how to win the decision. This ain't a channel, this a movement at this point. Every comment is a teacher, every video a joint that cracks the system open, lets the people see the truth. We the machine, they feared that. We keeping every proof. 100,000 deep. Let's go. The machine is here. 100,000 deep. Every prosecutor fear. 100,000 strong. We can't disappear. 100,000 eyes watching every gear. Watch the machine. Watch it. Watch the machine. Watch it. Daddy drew the blueprints on delivering the scene. 100,000 deep. And we just get. Look at where we started. Look at where we be. A coffee shop dream to 100K family. A father in the ground, but his fight is right here. Every video another reason for the system to fear. Look at where we going. Look at what we'll do. 200K then 5, then a million coming through. The machine is just beginning, Dad. We just got loud. Justice is a process, and the process making proud. Pop, can you see it from the cloud? We just getting started. 100,000 deep. Let's go. The machine is here. 100,000 deep. Every prosecutor fear. 100,000 strong. We can't disappear. 100,000 eyes watching every gear. Watch the machine. Watch it. Watch the machine. Watch it. Daddy drew the blueprints on delivering the scene. 100,000 deep. And we just getting started. So Stephen and Maskin, the blueprint, the vision.